This is the OFN Today on the Our Lads Football Network as we talk Jacksonville Jaguars football. And what an offseason it's going to be. And so far, it is for Jacksonville football. They have a new sheriff in town. They have the most cap space in any team in the NFL. And the number one pick, soon to be Trevor Lawrence. And for the first time on our network, I'm going to introduce a new guest analyst here. Glad to talk to her, especially because she's from my old neck of the woods, New Jersey, even though she has transported herself down to Florida the way that I did, probably when I was her age. That's Mia O'Brien, sports anchor for First Coast News in Jacksonville. Mia, thanks for talking to us.
Sprung from cages off Highway 9. Pleasure to be here, Greg. Thank you for having me.
All right, Jersey, where?
I'm from Freehold, so the
Freehold racetrack. Yes.
Yep. Bruce Springsteen's hometown. So when I say I'm from Springsteen country, it is not an exaggeration.
How long you been in Jacksonville?
I have been in Jacksonville since September of 2018. My first week on the job was when the Jaguars defeated Tom Brady in the revenge game when the Patriots came down to play week 2. And then they proceeded.
It's been all downhill since then.
Yeah. Yes. Took the words out of my mouth. So a lot of people joke it's me, but I don't know. Maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel because they are going to have Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer here real soon.
I can't imagine the excitement that's going on there for the football fans. I mean, that is a heck of a combination. I mean, you can't beat that. That just does not happen. Not even in a lifetime, I think that's going to happen for many fans.
Right. And that's where I think, a lot of people, as far as me and my career go, they just can't believe that, that this has happened. They're just like, how do you do that? Like, you can't leave. Like, you have to stay
That's
there
right.
now.
That's it.
See what happens. Because it's going to be a wild ride. So as long as they'll have me on it, I'm happy to be on the ride.
All right. Well, it should be a good ride. Not sure how long it's going to take, but still a lot of rebuilding. No question. And as I was going through the roster before I do on every one of these team shows, I was at one point I was like, I don't even know where to start. And I can't even ask the normal question about, well, how was 2020? I mean, we know how 2020 was. So let's kind of start fresh. Let's go, and I'm going to pick your brain as much as I can because there's just going to be so much turnover, I would assume, in this roster in the next couple of years. So, but first off, let's start with the coaching staff because that's the big story. Urban Meyer, what kind of a coach? I know it's early, but what kind of a coach do you think he's going to be?
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of the reverse of what we saw Herm Edwards do at Arizona State, where he went from an NFL position of coaching and then being an analyst to a college head coach, somewhere he hadn't been in eons. In Urban's case in the NFL, he has never coached in the NFL. And so both of them saw their role as CEO. And that's, what I think Urban will, like Herm, do here in this next year at the very least, where he acknowledges, I do not have this NFL experience, but I do have coaching experience. So I'm going to surround myself with an elite staff of folks who have done not just the college game, but also the pro game, obviously, pick their brains while also just trying to get the best out of my players possible. Urban has said he is not going to be the crazy coach running up and down the sidelines or sprinting after people at practice. Those days are over. I believe him when he says that because he is in his late 50s. Just like Herm Edwards, late 60s, early 70s in Arizona State. You don't really see him getting in people's grills at practice in Tempe. That's why he hired Antonio Pierce to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like he brought in people who can do that for him, but also have the pedigree as a coach, whether it's in the NFL or college, that they will get the respect and the best out of those individuals. So look for that to be the case. So far right now, all but confirmed. Darrell Bevell will be joining as offensive coordinator. That's reportedly on a 3-year deal. Most recently served as interim head coach and offensive coordinator with the Lions. Obviously served as offensive coordinator with the Seattle Seahawks during Russell Wilson's early years.
Yep.
On the defensive side of the ball, looking like it'll be Joe Cullen as the defensive coordinator. A lot of other names were floated around as well. This would be his first real defensive coordinator job in the NFL. He actually coached the defensive line of the Jaguars back from 2010 to 2012. And in talking to some folks that played on that D line, I mean, he has all their respect. Obviously, he's been coaching a pretty damn good defensive line in Baltimore these last few years. So that'll be interesting to see as well. But again, just like Bevel, he has a wide range of NFL experience. And that's what Urban Meyer is going to need to lean on in this first year at the very least.
Okay, now there was also, there is also a new general manager, and that's Trent Baalke. Is he the one that, now he was hired last year for player personnel? That was the job that he picked up in February last year, right?
Correct. And then he was promoted to interim general manager when Dave Caldwell was let go at the end of November. So he was in the building this last year. He's only been here for this 1 year, but he was there as, people had mixed reactions to owner Shad Khan saying how he retained Dave Caldwell and Doug Marrone last year because who better to fix the mess than those who had a hand in it. Take with that as you may. And listen, you know what? That may be Dave Caldwell and Doug Marrone's legacy. We've said Doug may go down as a cult hero if Trevor Lawrence turns out to be Trevor Lawrence because he delivered Trevor Lawrence to this city. And so I think Dave Caldwell, in the same token, I mean, as much as people were so angry with some of the trades that were made, he cleared the cap space.
Right.
He cleared this roster of any lingering older players that were headed towards retirement anyways, and large, massive contracts. So I think that's their legacy. And so Baalke was here for that. And I know a lot of people aren't too enthused about the hire. Obviously, his tenure in San Francisco did not end on the best of terms. But at the same time, this is a guy that's been in the league forever. He has not only experience working with a first-time head coach in Jim Harbaugh, but he has experience in working with a coach who made the jump from college to the pros. And so,
great point.
Yeah. And moreover, I mean, you look at what just happened in Carolina. Matt Rule gets there. They retain the internal hire for general manager. And within a year, they go 5-11. He's the scapegoat and he's out. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens too. Or maybe they win the Super Bowl. You never know.
Yeah. Maybe not in 21, but you could still dream.
Listen, those Tampa fans, their dreaming it's contagious. It's gotten over to us out here on the other side of Florida.
And it's unfortunate for those Tampa fans that most of them won't be able to attend the game.
Happens.
It happens. And by the way, one of those trades, Jalen Ramsey, he brings back the 25th pick in the first round. So what is it? 11 total picks and then 2 first rounders. And I believe 4 in the first 45.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so it's not just all about Trevor Lawrence. There's a ton of draft picks, and I wouldn't be surprised if Jacksonville's traded down a few other times to pick up as many other additional draft picks as Urban Meyer can get his hands on. And you mentioned Baalke. Not only was a nice comparison there with Harbaugh, Michigan, Ohio State, the same situation, college to pro, but Baalke was there when the 49ers started to build up the team that Harbaugh coached to the Super Bowl. So it may not have ended well, but it was a good beginning, and he definitely deserves another shot.
They won 3 NFC West titles and went to, multiple NFC, playoffs. So, I mean, if you're a Jacksonville Jaguar fan,
you'll take that.
You have no room to say that, to poo-poo that, because you take that any day of the week.
All right, now I'm going to throw the Jags current depth chart up on the screen as we go through it from ourlads.com. All right, so we know who the quarterback's going to be. Does that mean Minshew and Luton will probably just end up as 2 and 3, the kind of developmental guys behind Lawrence, or are they going to go out and try to get a veteran backup?
So this is where, in my opinion, things get extremely interesting. In my opinion, and this is someone who, has grown friendly and fond of the Minshew family during their time here in the Jacksonville area. At the end of the day, Gardner is only going to be 25, 26 years old by the time next season rolls around. I firmly believe if put in the right system, he can succeed as a starting quarterback in the National Football League. Moreover, because he really didn't play that much down the stretch because, the the Jaguars were preserving the tank. In my opinion, they were also preserving the trade asset. I could see them flipping Gardner Minshew and getting a fourth or a third rounder for him. I mean, they got a fourth rounder for Nick Foles, who by all accounts was damaged goods when he left here, albeit with a Super Bowl on his resume. Sure. So I would not be surprised if Minshew is flipped for picks. Okay. He is a competitor, and that's a double-edged sword, because I believe because he's such a competitor, he also believes he can start somewhere in the National Football League. But also, I think his drive and determination is similar to Urban Meyers, and so I could also see the two of them really meshing and becoming the long-term backup option here. Luton, I think, is a project. We'll see what happens. I mean, he's under contract. If nothing else, he's your practice squad quarterback. I am a firm believer that Mike Glennon saw the writing on the wall in the second half of the season. He knows that the Jaguars need a veteran backup quarterback who's going to mentor one Trevor Lawrence. And more than once in press conferences in those last 5-6 weeks, we heard Mike Glennon drop the phrase, being a mentor to younger quarterbacks. I am always willing to mentor younger quarterbacks. And so I personally believe the man was setting himself up for a job interview in a few months. The other names have been thrown around. Ryan Fitzpatrick, obviously, perhaps the most prolific of mentor quarterbacks in this National Football League over the last 20 years. Another name I would keep my eye on is, of course, Alex Smith. A lot of people forget he was coached by Urban Meyer out at Utah. There is certainly an opportunity for a reunion,
that was a long time ago.
Correct. People forget. That's
a good one.
So there's obviously an opportunity for that as a reunion, as a backup. I have also heard rumors of he is interested in getting into coaching. Who's to say that, a consultant role, offensive quality coach role here in Jacksonville with his old coach, maybe that's something that interests him. I mean, the weather's nice and there's no state income tax. So I think that those are two names to watch. And I think Mike Glennon is going to be vying for that spot. But I, again, believe that Gardner Minshew can start in this league. And I believe he believes that. Yeah. And he knows Trevor Lawrence is going to be starting here from day one.
Yeah, that sounds more like the idea that would make the most sense, would be to let Glennon be the mentor quarterback, whether or not they want to go after a Smith or a Fitzpatrick, whatever. An older guy makes a lot more sense because, I agree with you. I think Minshew's got some talent. And what's he going to do behind Trevor Lawrence? Nothing, unless Trevor Lawrence gets injured. And That's it. So why not give him a shot to be a starting quarterback on another team? There's enough teams in the NFL that definitely need quarterbacks. Not every team has a legitimate starting quarterback. So I'd like to see Minshew get a chance.
Absolutely.
All right. Running back situation seems to be really solid with the number one, James Robinson, who was a huge pickup. Not even you didn't have to use a draft pick on this kid. But James Robinson was one of the top rookies in all of the NFL last year. But the depth, that's another thing. So you expect them to add a couple of bodies, or do you think some of the young running backs they have on the roster might also fit the bill?
Yeah, I definitely think they'll be drafting a running back, and I believe they'll be drafting a running back in the third or fourth round, to be quite frank. Urban has really emphasized that he wants speed on this roster. I think in all his research he's done over the past 10 years before making this leap to the NFL, I think he's not saying this, but the Kansas City Chiefs model is something he is looking at and saying, I did that at the college level. How do I do that at the NFL level? Having so many weapons for Patrick Mahomes. And so I would not be surprised to see the Jaguars take a running back early. I think they have too many other pressing needs to take one in the first or second round. But don't be surprised to see one in the third or fourth round, and especially if it's a running back who's a great pass catcher. James is a tremendous pass catcher, but at the same time, you want that third down scat back type running back. I think everyone does, and I think it's a position the Jaguars have sorely missed over the last 2-3 seasons. As far as the current roster as is, Divine Ozigbo always flashes in training camp, and then a hamstring injury, and then an ankle injury, and it just piles up, and we never actually see him on Sundays. So that's a curious case to obviously examine. Maybe he's someone that Urban is enamored by. We can't tell right now. Raquel Armstead is obviously under contract, but has been widely reported, had 2 bouts with COVID-19 over the course of this past summer. He
Wow.
did not play this year because of it. We right now have no update on his status. So he is under contract. I couldn't tell you where his athletic career, goes from here. But he's another bruising hard back if he can go. That could complement James. And I think you are going to need one of those backs because frankly, I mean, and I talked to James the other day on Zoom, and I said to him, how are you feeling? Because he was shut down those last 2 weeks with injuries. And he told me, I could have played, but it was the right decision. And I don't think he's referring to preserving the tank. I think he's referring to preserving his health for seasons to come because this kid played more than 75% of the snaps.
Yep.
Tailback as a rookie. I mean, you don't want to run him into the ground right now. And so you need someone else to play alongside him.
And looking at his stats in college, you seem to play a lot of college ball too. So
exactly.
A lot of wear and tear.
Yes.
All right. Wide receivers. And this, I tell you what, you look at this wide receiver group and there are some really exciting young receivers already on this team with DJ Shark, Laviska Shenault, and Colin Johnson.
Right.
Of course, Shark didn't have the big year that he had in 2019. I know he had some injuries he was dealing with, but Shenault, I actually was like the big Laviska Shenault for the Heisman a couple of years ago. That's how exciting that kid looked the first half of that season. Then he had the injury and then it was all over. But it's nice to see that he was able to put together a season like this as a rookie with all the craziness going on with the Jacksonville offense. So there's a lot of hope there with that receiving core.
Absolutely. And that's where, as much as this is going to be for the second straight year, a very strong wide receiving core in the draft. I think the Jaguars have too many other holes that they can't afford to use a pick there. And I know that's an unpopular opinion, but I think, you have guys like Chark, like Shenault. Chark, they should be paying this offseason and extending. Hopefully that actually comes to pass because I think a new precedent needs to be set that you're one of our good players. You're homegrown. We're going to reward you. That was the issue with Jalen Ramsey, with Yannick Ngakoue. That didn't happen in the past. So this new regime needs to do that. That's for certain. In the same token, they would need to extend Keelan Cole, who is a restricted free agent this year. Undrafted in 2017, obviously was a major part of that team that went to the AFC Championship game, had a breakout campaign this year after 2 kind of middle of the road seasons. He's another real vertical threat for this team that complements Chark. He can also play in the slot if need be. In my opinion, they played Laviska in the slot too much this year. And so I would love to see him stretch the field more like we did towards the end of the year. So that's 3 guys right there. Yep. Then you got Colin Johnson, who's your red zone threat and can run. So, and your third down threat. So there's 4. Chris Conley most likely will walk after this year. That's okay. That leaves you 2 open spots. In my opinion, the Jags do need to address a slot receiver, having a smaller type of guy. You go through Trevor Lawrence's resume, whether it's most notoriously Hunter Renfrow. He always has that little, safety net, if you may, his security blanket that so many people liken to the tight end position over the middle. With him, it's always one of those little wide receivers. So you need to go get one of those guys, whether it's via a trade, free agency, or signing them.
Okay.
Or drafting them, excuse me.
That's good. All right. By the way, you said Cole is a restricted free agent?
Yes.
Okay.
Either restricted or unrestricted.
Okay.
One of the 2.
I just want to make sure.
He definitely is a free agent in some capacity.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's now. Oh, but by the way, the tight end situation. Tyler Eifert, who had an injury history, of course, in Cincinnati, but he's been pretty healthy the last couple of years, including his first year in Jacksonville. But he's age-wise, this is definitely a position that you could see Jacksonville wanting to upgrade. Absolutely. He was brought in because Jay Gruden was running the offense. They had a history. James O'Shaughnessy was coming off of a ACL tear. James O'Shaughnessy is definitely a serviceable number 2, number 3 tight end in this league. Obviously, this year he was learning to play with a brace. Can't fault him for that. But I do believe he can, provide a safety net and leadership for Trevor Lawrence and this young Jaguars team. The curious case is of Josh Oliver out of San Jose State, who the Jaguars used a 3rd-round pick on in 2019. His rookie season was marred by injuries, and then he had a season-ending injury in training camp this year. So we have really only seen him play 2 or 3 NFL games. He obviously gets rave reviews from everyone in the building, just like any of those guys that are, injured. But he works hard. He works so hard. Yeah. So maybe Urban sees something there. Maybe
maybe he doesn't. But in my opinion, that if Urban Meyer is to trade up at any position outside of the obvious needs along the offensive and defensive line, it will be for a tight end.
Okay, then in the offensive line, Cam Robinson has been okay since he's been a Jag, but he's a free agent, and that could definitely be an upgrade. No question. Left tackle. Now, where do you think that fits in? Is that where the Jags will want to spend early in the draft to try to get another new young left tackle of the future? Or do they try to bring Cam Robinson back for at least another year or two?
That, Urban Meyer said that who they take with the number 1 overall pick is one of the biggest decisions he'll have to make in his life. Who they pick at left tackle is the second most important decision.
Okay.
In my opinion, I think you tag Cam Robinson because at this point in time, is he the best left tackle in the world? No. But is he serviceable? Yes. So you tag him. And in tagging him, you also go out and with one of those first 4 picks in the first 50 picks of this year's NFL draft, you do find his replacement. Or you find someone, in my opinion, Alex Leatherwood might be the most viable of those candidates, who, if they don't work out so much at left tackle, they can always slide into guard, and then you do get some return on the investment. The Jaguars have, in the interior of their offensive line, Brandon Linder has 2 more years on his deal. Andrew Norwell, AJ Cann, the left and right guard, respectively, have 1 more year left on their deals. All 3 of them, are in the top 4 highest paid players on this roster in 2021. And so you will, in my opinion, you keep the 5 that you have. You keep them, and that's your opening day 5. No big deal. But you are drafting their replacements with those among those other 11 picks that you have.
Yeah, it's not a bad unit.
No, I just don't believe. I know a lot of people here are really in favor of throwing the bag, for lack of a better term, at Trent Williams. I am not. I mean, I don't see the point at throwing a 3-year contract at someone in their 30s.
Exactly. This is not the team. This is not the rebuilding team. Shouldn't be signing 33-year-old left tackles.
Correct.
Unless they can afford to in some way. But the Jags, I like your plan better. Okay. Now, as far as the defense is concerned, there's a lot here. I mean, there's going to be a lot of new players on this defense, even though there's a few young players that will definitely be a part of the future, including Josh Allen, who unfortunately missed most of the season with a knee injury, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, so are they going to stick? Do you know whether or not they stick with the 4-3?
That is another $1 million question to answer this offseason. This is a team that, if you look at the personnel, is built for a 3-4. Without a doubt. If you add a couple pieces here and there, minus a few, subtract, it's built for a 3-4. But for whatever the reason, Todd Wash over the last 3 to 4 years has been dead set on trying to fit circle pegs into square holes. And much to the chagrin of this Jaguars fan base. And so I personally, Urban Meyer is notorious at all of his stops. He looked at his personnel and he changed his scheme accordingly. Joe Cullen ran a 3-4 up in Baltimore. So the writing is on the wall that they will be moving to a 3-4. That then does create a couple more holes, because then the question becomes, are you lining up Josh Allen and Kayvon Chaisson as outside linebackers? Sure. Are you keeping them up front? If you're keeping them up front, that defensive line, whether it's a 3-4 or a 4-3, has a ton of questions in and of itself. I think the only position, to be quite frank, on the entire defense that you are solidified is with Myles Jack and Joe Schobert up the middle at the linebacker position, whether it's a 4-3 or a 3-4. I think you're good with those 2 guys. Other than that, in my opinion, depending where you put Chaisson and Allen, everything else is up for grabs.
It does make a lot of sense, though, where you have Allen, Chaisson, and Chaisson didn't. He was one of those players you were talking about, where he was completely put in the wrong position.
Right, completely put in the wrong position. And you mentioned about James Robinson with the tread on, wear and tear on the tires. Kayvon Chaisson is such a fascinating case study. And I talked to his high school coach last year about this. He really didn't start playing varsity football until late in his junior year of high school. Wow. He goes to LSU. He only plays really half of his freshman year, tears his ACL game one of his sophomore year, and then his redshirt sophomore year was the year he broke out and LSU went to the national championship game. So when you really come down to it, this kid has really only played 3.5 years of organized football coming into his NFL
Yeah.
career. And so he is more of a project, and that's okay. That's
Sure.
not the end of the world. But 100%, this is a guy that never had a hand in the dirt at LSU, and yet the Jags were dead set from day one. He's going to have a hand in the dirt here, which it makes no sense.
Well, that's why those guys are gone. Okay.
Yes.
So at the interior also needs some help. Whether they go to a 3-4 or 4-3, they got to get some bigger bodies up front. Gotsis was brought in last year. He's a free agent. Avery Jones, who's been a long-term player for the organization, missed most of last season. He's a free agent. So Devon Hamilton, though, what's the deal with Devon Hamilton? Is it possible if you go to a 3-4, he could be a key part of the interior?
He's going to be a key part of the interior regardless. He was easily one of the best picks that this team made in the 2020 NFL draft, and he's an Ohio State guy that played for Urban. So hands down, he will be the X factor. Just one of those guys that you saw him grow each game. And it's so sad he had the knee injury that ended his season, because you saw growth every time he stepped on the field. And it was so encouraging to see. And because this team has spent picks on Taven Bryan and Tyson Alualu, if we really want to go all the way back, they've spent picks on interior defensive linemen, and it hasn't worked out. They took this guy in the 3rd round, and we're all kind of looking around like, who is this dude? And he panned out tremendously. So regardless of if it's a 4-3, 3-4, he'll be a nose tackle of the future. Another guy that came on in Hamilton's absence, Daniel Equale, 2nd year, former undrafted free agent, I do believe. He really came on. And then Doug Costin, undrafted free agent rookie out of Miami, made the 53-man roster at the start of the season. Was a healthy scratch the first few weeks, but he really came on as well. I mean, I don't have his numbers right in front of me right now, but definitely we joke around here that he was costing people their jobs, including Taven Bryan, former 1st-round pick, who he was starting over the last 6 weeks of the season. Okay. So I think those two guys, as good as they were, they are rotational pieces. I do think you bring Avery back because he provides that veteran leadership. It was actually pretty funny towards the end of the year. He couldn't play, but at every practice, he was like a player coach. It was hilarious. So I think you bring Avery back. And then, you look to address in the draft, in my opinion, at number 25, that's where you're going with number 25 is defensive tackle, because it's not that deep of a defensive tackle draft class. And I mean, you have the opportunity at 25 to get one of the top 2 or 3 guys.
Okay. And is that unless maybe there's a left tackle there?
Perhaps. As someone who used to cover Iowa football, I am a firm believer you can find a good left tackle out of the Big Ten in day 2 or day 3.
Okay, yeah. So, all right. The defensive backfield. Now, this is besides C.J. Henderson, who missed the second half of the season with the groin injury, and he had his moments. Looked like, okay, he's got a pretty good future potentially there with the team. Looks like a completely new unit is about to occur, right?
Yes. So when CJ went down, it was a lot of moving pieces going on. Trey Herndon originally was the day 1 starter opposite CJ Henderson. His natural position prior to the Jalen Ramsey trade was as the backup nickel corner. Okay. Yeah. So, and then he moved outside, and now he's been there. When DJ Hayden went down with a season-ending injury, he slid back to nickel. That allowed Sidney Jones, the former 2nd-round pick out of Philadelphia, who was brought into the Jags off the practice squad, that allowed him to really emerge. And he looked tremendous. And everyone in Philly was texting me like, oh my God, like this is who we thought he was going to be. And so I think he competes. If you can somehow get him back in the building, I think Sidney Jones is a viable option, and obviously a cheaper option than signing, one of the many free agents on the market. In my opinion, I think the safety position is where the Jaguars do spend in free agency, whether it's Justin Simmons or whoever, because as reliable as Jared Wilson, the former undrafted free agent and now turned captain of this team has been, and he's a steady presence. He's not a game changer. They don't have any game changers. And so I think you got to go out and find one of those. And you do need to have a veteran presence. And so that's where I might look to really use the, most cap space in the NFL this offseason, because you have some good depth guys between Wilson and Andrew Wingard. And they're really high on Brandon Watson as well. So there are guys there. And especially I completely forgot Daniel Thomas, who they spent a 5th-round pick on and was really coming into his own, 5th-round pick out of Auburn, until he suffered a season-ending injury. And so there is talent, but I think it's depth. And that's a good thing.
Sure.
2 years ago, that was the issue with this Jaguar team. The starters who were elite got hurt, and there was no one below them. So there's nothing wrong with building depth.
Quickly, Josh Lambo, the hope is he going to be healthy, and then he's going to go right back to picking up where he left off before the injury?
Absolutely. Right back to all-pro status. No offense to Justin Tucker, but we know who the all-pro in the AFC is.
Okay. And lastly, the last minute, the fan base ownership. They don't seem to, I can understand if they don't see eye to eye. There's been a lot of losing in Jacksonville, but how does the community like the owner personally?
It's a very complicated situation in that he doesn't own any property here. He doesn't live in Jacksonville. His son, Tony, is currently using the amphitheater between the Jaguars practice facility and stadium to run his AEW wrestling company. And yet they don't really have residency, so to speak. So that part's very complicated, because then in the same token, they're trying to create a winner while also having a lot of other outside projects in the city of Jacksonville. They were trying to develop a parking lot right outside the stadium. That was shut down by the city council a couple weeks ago. Now they're trying to build up the shipyard area along the St. Johns River across the street from the stadium. And so they're trying to invest in the city. I think people are concerned it's half-heartedly. But that's the same way many fans have felt about the Cons' view of the football team. And so I personally think that Jaguar fans cannot complain after this coming year, because at the end of the day, they wanted Shad to be bold, to make a move, and he did that. He delivered them Urban Meyer. He went for the home run hire.
Yes.
He did not go try to find the next Sean McVay, try to find a cute little coordinator. He went all out, and give him credit.
Might be late, but hey, everybody deserves a second, third, fourth chance.
Exactly. Absolutely.
All right, Mia, great job. I really appreciate it. I look forward. This could be a busy offseason for you and a fun offseason. So I look forward to getting the opportunity to talk to you again sometime between free agency and the draft.
You got it. Absolutely. We're looking forward to
Remember, us Jersey kids have to stick together.
That's for sure. Absolutely.
Thanks, Mia.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. Thank you. All right. That is Mia O'Brien. And again, Mia working with First Coast News in Jacksonville. So can't wait to get her on again during this offseason. Because that's really important when you're taking a look at the teams in the NFL that are going to, and I talk about this and I know it as a Jet fan. I know the experience of saying, hey, you know what? The regular season's over. Even right now, 30 teams are already thinking about the offseason, the draft, whatever. There's only 2 teams thinking about the Super Bowl. Everybody else, look at Buffalo. Yes, they had a great season. You want to be where the Buffalo Bills are as a fan base. There's no question about that. I'm not trying to say that you want to be the Jags or the Jets. I get that. But just as far as you have to take the good with the bad, or the bad with the good, in this case, the good with the bad, and that is, hey, you know what? It's behind us. And if you're a Jag fan, you have got to be just stoking right now, because I said this with the Jet Show. And I talked about this being a time that you had better soak in, because it doesn't come around very often. And that is because I can't even believe that the Jet fan base is excited all in one regarding their new head coach. Now, all of a sudden, could they get Deshaun Watson? As far as the Jags, they have an opportunity now with the hottest coaching candidate in years, Urban Meyer, on board, the cap space, a potential diamond quarterback and Trevor Lawrence. These things just don't come around very often. So this is a time to just soak it all in. And I knew that I was going to need somebody that I could turn to a few times during the offseason to update me on what's going on in Jacksonville. And Mia did a great job prepping us for the offseason. So I really appreciate her taking her time to talk to us. Okay, now we want to remind everybody here on the channel, if you like the channel, just click on that blue icon on the bottom of the screen, and you can subscribe to this channel. This way, it'll make it a lot easier for you to know whenever we have our shows available. And that also, if you can like the video as well, please do that. That helps us out as a channel. The more you can like and subscribe to our videos, the easier it is for us to market these shows throughout YouTube. And by doing that, of course, it gives us the opportunity to make these shows better. And we have a lot of great ideas. I think you've seen where we've come just since we've started the football season in 2020 in September. We told you at that time we had already been on video for a few months, but just look where we've been from September of 2020 to right now. I mean, it's just like night and day. And we want to continue to do that for you here on the Lads Football Network. So again, subscribe, like as often as you can. And we hope to bring you great broadcasts here with great guests like me, O'Brien, covering the Jacksonville Jaguars as much as possible. By the way, also coming up in the coming weeks, we have Fred Greetham. He's with the he covers the Cleveland Browns. He's been on this show, on this network before. Senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, 247 Sports. So that's coming up tomorrow, I believe. Thursday, we don't have anybody scheduled for Thursday just yet. But on Friday, we have Jeff Risdon. He covers the Detroit Lions for the Lions Wire at usatoday.com. He also has a huge podcast, Lions podcast, on the YouTube channel. So we'll talk Cleveland Browns football, Detroit Lions football later this week. We're also going to talk Tennessee Titans, Minnesota Vikings, San Francisco 49ers, and Baltimore Ravens next week. So that's what we have scheduled already for next week. And that is Teresa Walker covers the Titans for the AP. Chris Thomason covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Pioneer Press. Cam Inman covers the San Francisco 49ers for the San Mercury News. And Tony Lombardi covers the Baltimore Ravens for the Russell Street Report. And we've had all of those analysts, everyone that I mentioned on this network before. So me is our first new analyst for the 2021 year, the 2021 off season. And of course, she did a great job. We'd look to talk to her more and have her back again. Anyway, that's it for Jags Talk on the OFN Today, Lads Football Network. We will talk to you next time.